I'm about to tell you a story that fortunately most of you in here I think know me. I think I recognize almost everyone, and you've heard me before. That's a good thing. Sorry about that. The reason that's a good thing, that's not bad. The reason that's a good thing is because what I'm about to tell you, you're either, if you didn't know me, you're going to say, Garland, either you are crazy or you're lying to us, or you just don't really know the facts of what really happened. So let me just address those 3 points right up front. I will not lie to you. I am a little crazy. And I do have a total command of the facts of this case. So what I'm going to tell you is, in fact, the facts are not disputed. Only one fact in this entire case, so I'm going to tell you that, is in dispute. That in itself is amazing. So I'm going to be playing with Jack's little toy here that's fantastic. If I get carried away and I get off slide, Jack, you keep me honest here because this is really cool. We're going to pose some questions tonight to you that are going to ask the question that Chris Ann Hall asked, does the Constitution actually really work? Does it work here in Georgia? Did it work for a lady named Amy Bramuchi? Jack and I met Amy at a Freedom and Liberty Coalition meeting. She told me about this story, told on all of us. I started checking it out, and I, quite frankly, I didn't really believe it all at the beginning. Everything she told me, I checked out. Everything, every single thing she told me turned out to be true. So now what I want to do is walk you through the facts of what happened. I'm going to start off with posing a few questions for you. First, can police break into your home while you're searching without any type of a warrant? Can they refuse to leave after you call 911 and repeatedly order them out of the house? Can they demand you be medically assessed against your will in your own home? Can they attempt to kidnap you and have you committed with no medical cause? Can they shoot you if you retreat into your bedroom and refuse to comply? This happened to Amy Bramuchi on September 25th, 2013. But it gets worse. By the way, the answers to those questions, the first answer is actually true. Yes, they could actually do that according to current Georgia law and the Constitution. The last 4 that I just asked you are legally no. However, Fulton County District Attorney is saying that they are legal. Yes, that was okay. All of those things can be done if you live in Fulton County and you're under the jurisdiction of District Attorney Paul Howard. But it gets worse. Can a district attorney charge you with the crimes that the police officers committed 18 months later? That's what they did to Amy. Can a court gag you so that you cannot tell anyone on social media what happened to you? Didn't we have a First Amendment? Maybe not. Can you be jailed without bond despite there is no physical evidence of your alleged crime? I would think not. Everything that I'm telling you happened to Amy Bramuchi, and it is undisputed fact. And that is why I am involved in this case. This is beyond anything I've ever seen in the state of Georgia or anywhere. And it is compelling enough that where we as freedom and liberty-minded people have to get involved and help her. I'm going to walk you through the agenda quickly tonight. We're first, in any legal case, we're going to have undisputed facts. I want to take you through the exact sequence of events that happened because we know exactly what happened down to the minute. I'll walk you through that so everybody will understand what happened. We're going to talk about how the victim, in this case Amy Bramuchi, was charged with the crime. We're going to go into the legal arguments. We're going to explain why Fulton County thinks this is okay and why it's not. We're going to talk about this unconstitutional gag order that she had, how she was jailed without bond. We're going to talk just briefly about laws, protections, procedures, and those that were violated. We don't have enough time to talk about all those. Those will, and in fact, we're still trying to figure it out because there's so many violations, we can't count them all. We're going to talk about a massive cover-up going on, in particular with the Alpharetta Police Department. This is where this event occurred. We're going to talk about how the incident escalated into a shooting and who escalated it and why, the real motive. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the sad part of this story, and we're talking about a lady whose life has been totally destroyed through disabilities from the shooting and financial hardship that she has suffered as a result of being asleep in her bed when the police broke in. And finally, I want to finish up with asking you to please help. So, let me start with the undisputed facts of the case. This is exactly what happened. On September 25, 2013, a group of Alpharetta, Georgia police officers broke into the townhome of Amy Bramuchi without a warrant while she was sleeping. A total of 14 police officers, 3 firefighters, 2 medics were dispatched to her townhome for what was supposedly going to be a simple wellness check. I'm sorry, these are just undisputed facts. These are not the sequence of events yet. The officers found she was alive and she was well. She exited her bedroom after being awoken by the disturbance. And then they refused to tell her why they were there. Amy did not know why they were there and then called 911 to try to find out why they were there and get them out of her house. She was pretty livid by that time. At least 9 individuals were in her home against her will. They refused to leave. She ordered them out at least 10 times that we can count. We think it's much more than that. Finally, officers Glass and Stone followed her back up to the bedroom and shot her 3 times up there.
What prompted them to go initially?
I'm going to get to that. So they were prompted to go initially based on a call that they got, and it was a call that was alleged that she was suicidal and had a gun. And it came in through that regular line. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Probably should have even started there. Basically, she suffered permanent debilitating injuries from the police attack. She has harmed no one in the attack when she was shot 3 times. On April 14, 2015, 18 months later, she was charged with 4 felonies in the attack that was committed against her. On June 26th, the gag order was issued that prevented her from publishing information about the case on social media. On July 10th, she was jailed without bond on a charge that she pointed a gun at a roommate, although police actually searched the place for 2 days and never found a gun. Amy has no record in Georgia of ever physically harming anyone or ever being convicted of any crime. Now, let's get back to your point, which is probably where I started. This is the exact sequence of events of what happened. Alpharetta police received a call that Amy was suicidal and had a gun. Now, for those of you who don't know, that any police department is not equipped to handle suicides. There's a couple right over here that can tell you they have first-hand experience of that. In charge of this event was Lieutenant Trent Lindgren. He and a group of officers broke into her home after they had gotten the call that she was suicidal. Now, this call came in on the regular line, not the 911 line. As I said, 14 officers, 3 firefighters, 2 medics.
Who made the call,
Okay, good question. The call came in from a friend of hers. We think it was a legitimate call. She once thought was a crack call or malicious, but I believe that the call was legitimate. It came in from a man named Kevin Bassler, who was concerned that she had threatened suicide, and she did in fact have sent him a text or email that said something to the effect of, oh, your death will be on my hands, or see you on the flip side, that kind of thing. So there was a couple of texts that he received. So out of what I think was a legitimate concern, he then called the regular line of Alpharetta Police. Thanks for asking me that. That's great. So basically, they break in, they clear downstairs, they go upstairs, and Amy opens her bedroom door after waking up and finds Officer Mark Glass pointing a gun directly at her. Glass asked her to show him her hands. She showed him her hands. She asked why the officers were there. They didn't answer. He then patted her down and asked her to come downstairs with him. Now, the important thing to remember right here is that at that point in time, the officers had determined that Amy was fine, there was no emergency, and at that point in time, the lieutenant in charge of this operation, Lieutenant Trent Lindgren, should have terminated the wellness check. But he didn't do that. They went downstairs. Lindgren would not stay while the police were there. She continued to get angry. As she got downstairs, she became even more angry after she found out that her front door was broken down and her apartment or townhome was no longer secure. So she becomes extremely angry and begins cursing at the officers for what they did. And she then repeatedly continues to demand that the officers leave, and she dials 911. So she tells the 911 operator, I have a large group of officers who broke my door down and damaged the inside of my house, and I want to know why they're here. In no unchoice certain words. During the 911 call, she orders them out of the house 10 times. 10 times. The dispatcher told Amy to go talk with the officer in charge at the scene. She should have put the command shift supervisor on the phone. So if this ever happens to any of you, immediately call 911, but ask for the command shift supervisor. No one would know to do that. So after the 911 call, Lindgren still does not tell her why they're there, and he refuses to clear her house of officers even after the 911 call, and she's agreed to talk to the officer in charge as the 911 dispatcher told her to do. The problem is it was the officer in charge at the scene who was violating the law. So Amy is then getting more and more angry. She goes outside. For a minute. The officers come out, so she gets the officers out of the house. Then she goes back in the house. Still, no one has told her why they were there. Finally, after this situation escalated, she's furious and cursing. One of the officers, Officer Stone, Randall Stone, told her that they had gotten a suicide call threat, and that referenced a text message that she had written. She asked, have you seen the text message? They said, no, we have not. So they had no physical evidence of anything being suicidal other than this one call. Then the medic enters the residence. Medic from rural metro named Kevin Seiler enters the residence. He attempts to force Amy into an on-scene medical assessment with no authority. She refused. She says, I'm not suicidal. Get out of my house. Seiler then is actually led out by a firefighter, not the officer in charge of the scene. A firefighter tried to de-escalate this slightly. He then threatens to forcefully remove her for a psychological evaluation, again, with no authority whatsoever. And that angered her even more. So, Amy then runs back to the bedroom. She slams the door to get away from the attackers, but the bedroom door doesn't lock. Officer Mark Glass and Randall Stone follow her back upstairs and enter the bedroom. At that time, Amy has an unloaded gun on the floor. She goes to pick that up. Glass and Stone fired what we believe to be 6 shots and hitting her 3 times. Nothing that I have just told you is in dispute. There is no disputed fact. The only question is whether or not Amy actually pointed the gun at the officers. We'll get to that point in a minute. So the victim then is charged with the crime. 18 months later, on April 14th, 2015, Amy is charged with aggravated assault, 2 counts of obstruction, and possession of a firearm with intent to commit a felony, which apparently is supposedly shooting the police officer, I guess. All the charges stem from the Alpharetta police attack on her, not from something she did prior to that, because she had no record of any kind of ever even physically harming anyone. But nevertheless, she turned herself on April 24th and was jailed for a day until her father arranged to post a standard bond. Please keep in mind the word standard there. That's going to come to play later. So here are the legal arguments that I think apply to this case that I think everybody would be interested in. First of all, there is no law against committing suicide in Georgia. So if you really feel like doing that when you get home, that's fine. I'm not. I'm going to stick around and try to help this lady. So if you hear that I have committed suicide, I want to tell you right now, I will never do that, and that means that somebody in the Alpharetta Police or the Fulton County District Attorney's Office has pulled that trigger on me. Okay, so I want you to know that right up front. So basically, here's the issue. Once Lieutenant Lindgren told officers where Amy was okay, they found her upstairs, she was fine, Lindgren reports that they're okay. At that time, thanks to a brilliant legal mind who I know is in this room right now, at that time there was no probable cause or exigent circumstances to legally stay in the property. Okay, you have to have probable cause or exigent circumstances to override the Fourth Amendment rights. By the way, exigent circumstances, let's talk about that for a minute. So exigent circumstances essentially means an emergency. Exigent circumstances basically is kind of essentially divided by case law, and it allows some leeway in overriding the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. So in other words, if you have exigent circumstances, suddenly the Constitution of the United States doesn't apply anymore. But even in this case, there were no exigent circumstances because you have to have some kind of an emergency. So what that means is if you saw somebody who was sick and dying in their house and you looked through the window, you could legally break in, even though it might violate the Fourth Amendment, and then try to help that. That was what the intent of it was, not to do anything like this. Use of force law. Amy had a right to defend herself against aggressors. When the officers refused to leave the first time, they were trespassers, as I've learned. When they refused to leave the second time, they became aggressors. You have the right to defend yourself against aggressors, whether they wear a badge or not. There's no provision under any law for you to not to defend yourself. Furthermore, that same use of force law prevents an officer or anyone else from the right of self-defense. Because if you're an aggressor in someone's home, you have no right of self-defense. This is what's going to be claimed and what is being claimed right now. Furthermore, Defensive Habitation Act gives Amy or anyone else the ability to forcefully defend her property against aggressors who refuse to withdraw on any of three conditions. One is Alpharetta Police, in this case, had forcibly broken into her house. That it was a met. She was aware that they were forcefully and unlawfully present, and they threatened to commit a felony, which was to kidnap her and take her for an evaluation. If any one of those three things are present, she has the right of defense, according to the Defensive Habitation Act. However, in this case, all three conditions were present, not just one, all three.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
After she was shot and obviously went to the hospital and recuperated, what happened then? Did she go to an institution and have a test, competency test or something?
No. She hasn't been to any institution because there's nothing she's done that's been was wrong.
So they didn't have a competency hearing even then?
No. There was never any grounds to have a competency hearing to begin with.
Well, someone thought she was going to commit suicide.
Right, but they were wrong.
Anybody can say that. That doesn't mean it's true.
Exactly.
What's the saying?
Anyone can say, I could call up tomorrow and say, gee, I think you,
Oh, I know, and I agree with that, but can you imagine that if she hadn't committed suicide and Fulton County didn't show up, what a lawsuit they would have had? I'm just trying to understand the whole situation. I didn't mean to interrupt, so go ahead.
no, that's okay. That's a great question. So there was quite a few things they could have done. They didn't necessarily have to break into her house to perform a wellness check. That in turn is kind of unusual to begin with. So there's quite a lot of tactics that they could have used, but what we're going to see here as we go through this is that this situation is going to escalate, and it's going to be escalated by the very same one individual, and I'm going to explain to you why that is. James?
Garland, let's ask a quick question.
Sure.
We've got the call here, and I think it's working with the person. If we can go back one slide real quick. So when we look at the legal arguments, rather than talking about what did happen, what would have made this, to your point, what would have made this legal? Would they have had to go in front of a probate,
They couldn't get a warrant because they thought she was fixing to kill herself.
well, there is a process to commit something. There's a process with the 1013 process.
Obviously, they don't have one.
Well, yeah, but my question is that what should have happened? Should they have gone in front of a judge and gotten that
Well, you can't commit somebody based on a call with no medical experience whatsoever.
Well, no, actually, you can. I mean, the sheriff can do that if they go in front of a judge and say we have, a reason to believe. So they can do that.
You would have to have a medical reason to believe. There is no sheriff in Georgia that can do that because they're not medically trained and they're not medically competent.
No, that's not true. It's very rare, so I just happen to have talked to attorneys about it for other reasons. So in Georgia, you can, but the sheriff's department can do that. They go through it doesn't happen very often. In fact, he told me it happens 12, 14 times a year in Georgia. But the sheriff can do that. That's why I was curious about, how could they illegally have done this to,
So there's something called the Baker Act, and I'm going to this is a great question, I'm not going to apologize. But there's something called a Baker Act that's in Florida. I'm not aware of Georgia. Did you want to talk to that? Not yet? I'm sorry. Okay, well, yes, sir. Great.
Had the officers arrived at her home and say, looked in the window, they saw maybe a chair, there's a rope hanging from the ceiling, with a noose on it, that probably established a cause for them to go in, but, with that, there's no crime,
Yeah, exactly, and that's a great point. So just to clarify that, It is legally acceptable to James' point, and I think yours, to break into someone's house given the call that they got. It could have been a legitimate suicide call. What is totally unacceptable is that when they found that she was alive and well, they refused to terminate the wellness check. That is the bone of contention that will be disputed in both criminal and civil cases when this comes up.
I think breaking in the house, there was no cause to break in the house, to physically force their way into the house.
Maybe they should have read the emails prior to entering the home and contacted that person and investigated. But, you know, if you get a call and say, my friend's killing themselves, will you go over there? The natural thing for the police is to help people and to do that. Let's just be realistic about it. And you would want your family to be, particularly older people, and when they get dementia. And the police do a lot of calls like that.
Right, but I think I would, generally speaking, agree with you that it turned out the original intent was legitimate. Once they determined that she was fine.
Well, they never did.
Oh yeah, they did. They saw her. She was fine. She was sleeping in the bed. No. Let's go back and get the facts. Let's get the facts straight. The facts are important. She came out of her bedroom door. Officer Glass said, "Can I see your hands?" She showed him her hands. Officer Glass patted her down. So to say that she had a gun at that time is absolute total lie. Total lie. And even the Alpharetta police officers would not say that lie. They know that she had no gun at that time and she was perfectly fine. They'd just gotten her out of bed. There is no excuse for not terminating that wellness check at that point in time. That is the legal issue that is going to continue through this case. Yes, sir.
Is there a time frame between the phone call that came in and when the 14 people showed up at her place?
Yes. What is the time frame? Great question. I'm sorry, I should have put this on the original time. The call came in at 6 o'clock. She was shot 3 times just after 6:30.
Somebody had to make a split decision to send 14 people. I mean, I got cousins that are in law enforcement. They're lucky to get one patrol car with one guy.
Yeah,
Something like that.
right, and that's a good question. Now, I don't mean to imply that all 14 were dispatched at the exact same moment. There was originally a group of 5 or 6. Then more and more came in.
Yeah, somebody answered for whose idea it was to send that many people, like in a matter of minutes.
You're going to see before we're through why they sent that many people.
What time was this? What time did they?
6 p.m. It was still light out.
They had 14 there, Garland, because they broke up a poker.
Because they what?
Broke up a poker game.
Either that or it couldn't have been a donut breakfast. You're right, it must have been a poker game.
Over there, Carl.
Wonder who the dealer might have been.
Yeah. Yes. That's okay. Sir, you can interrupt any time.
Thank you, sir. Just play devil's advocate. If I'm a cop and I get a call and says someone trying to commit suicide, I'm trying to be a good Samaritan. I go there and knock the door down because we don't know. We don't know what's going on in that house.
Right.
When you go in, you ask the person, are you all right? Are you going to commit suicide?
That's right.
My question would be, if the person, whether they have temporary mental problems or they've got a long history of mental issues, wouldn't it be within the scope for them to say, no, I'm fine, the cops leave, and then they go up and finish the job? So I guess what I'm saying is that at some point, don't they still have to find out, not take her word for the fact, because they weren't told that she was going to commit suicide?
Great question. I think this man can answer.
In the state of Georgia, the state, in making its laws, is very careful that it does not impose a duty upon you
to perform a service for me. You understand that concept?
I think I think you're going with that.
It says, the law says you may do this for someone else, or it may say you have a duty to do this, but it will not say you'll do this or we're gonna do something to you. The legislature won't make a law like that. In the state of Georgia, it is not a criminal offense. Can y'all hear me?
No, I can't.
Stand up, Judge.
Get here.
In
Josh got a mic.
In the state of Georgia, it is not a criminal offense to take your life. Keep that in mind. It is not a criminal offense to watch someone take their life. It is a criminal offense to assist someone in taking their life. The law enforcement officers who arrived at Amy's house that night, the lieutenant, since he was the one in charge, had a duty only to determine if she was well and healthy within the limits of his ability to make that discernment. He is not expected to make a medical decision.
But he called in the medical expert.
They did, yes,
No,
they did.
no, wait a minute. A medic is not a medical expert. A medic is not a medical expert. Just so you know that.
An EMT is not a doctor. Oh, now, speaking of doctors, one more thing.
Certainly not a psychologist or a
I would
psychiatrist.
have to be a mental health expert.
Well, here's the trick about, another little trick about Georgia law. And that is that a doctor can authorize the forced confinement and transportation to a medical facility on his personal examination. There was no attending physician present that night. And the law does not require, keep in mind, the law permits or the law requires, or the law admonishes you not to do something. But it does not require a law enforcement officer to make a professional medical determination, only an observation within what would be termed a reasonable and prudent individual. We can all look at each other here and know we're all crazy as bed.
Put the mic up. No. Your mouth.
Let me shut up.
He meant up to your mouth, not up. Look,
How do you know the law so much?
I,
Former police chief, deputy sheriff, former judge.
before we go on, I just want to say it's a great honor to have Mr. and Mrs. Messina here tonight. They lost their son to a sniper in Cherokee County. Tremendous honor that you came out tonight. We thank you for that. So, and I know that's an ongoing thing with you in terms of the case. I'm going to move to the unconstitutional gag order. So basically, Fulton County District Attorney realized something was up. They ended up, I think I told you, did we go through the charges? Did I tell you about? Yeah. Okay. We talked about her being charged with the crime. So Fulton County basically, their objective now is to shut her up. She's getting too much publicity. She's on social media. So they called an emergency bond hearing, an attempt to revoke her bond and throw her in jail. Now, Amy told me that this was going to happen. She told me that the police officers are going to testify, and I said, well, what are they going to say? They're going to say, well, that I made too many contacts with them about my case. And I said, what? I didn't believe her. I said, there's got to be more to it than that. So sure enough, we show up on June 26th. We have the whole video you can see on Justice for Amy. And that's exactly what they did. I sat there and I watched them testify for 2 hours, 6 Alpharetta police officers, in an emergency bond hearing at great taxpayer expense to complain that she'd made too many calls and letters and contacts and emails to them to get information about her case after they shot her 3 times. I couldn't believe it. This is your taxpayer dollars at work in the city of Alpharetta, and Fulton County for that matter. All of the officers admitted during the hearing that she never threatened a single one of them with any kind of bodily harm whatsoever. They just were sitting there whining and complaining. And I was stunned. Nevertheless, basically, they thought that she had done a little bit too much, too many calls, so the judge imposed a special bond condition to prevent her from contacting police except in emergency. Remember that. That's going to come back. By the way, during this, you remember I told you to remember that she had a standard bond. Well, during this case, the assistant district attorney, Lauren McCauley, went so far as to repeatedly and falsely claim to the judge that she had special bond conditions that prevented her from posting on social media about her case. The judge pulls up the bond. He says, there's no conditions in here. The bond had no conditions. I looked in the case file. Sure enough, there is a falsified warrant that has bond conditions on it. So the assistant district attorney produced a falsified warrant, and then the judge asked her, show me the warrant that you're talking about, show me the bond. And she said, well, I don't have it. I said, well, I negotiated the conditions with her previous attorney. I said, okay, well, if you negotiated the conditions with the previous attorney, why is it you can't produce the bond that you're talking about in the court? I think she had to know she was lying. So anyway, despite all this, and the judge caught her literally in the lie, and then still imposed, but he did say, the judge says, look, you better, he told her attorney, which at that time was a public defender who works for the court, basically, and feels that they're subordinate to a prosecutor. He told her that if she turns out she's lying, you ought to do something about that. Well, of course, public defender's not going to do that. That's why you have to have a real attorney. That's what we're going to get to in a little bit. So the judge went ahead, though, and imposed a social media gag order that said that she cannot disseminate or publish any information regarding the case on social media. So her First Amendment rights went out the window, although she had done no wrong. But they had to keep this quiet as much as they could, which is another reason why I wanted to get involved. I'm going to make it 20 times worse for them than they ever would have had with Amy. But it didn't stop there. So she was then jailed without bond. Now this is another part of the crazy story. She had to get a new roommate, and this new roommate is kind of a strange guy. He's a bartender. He had some, I believe he has a few drinking problems, but he's had a DUI and some other stuff. But nevertheless, he called 911 and contended that she had pointed a gun at his head several times. Now, this is after her guns were confiscated from the previous event. This is like 2 years. This was happening in July. He might be telling the truth. He may be very sincere. No gun, however, was found after 2 police searches of that property, even with the canines. And they even found an old spent shell from the original shooting of Amy back on September 25th, 18 months earlier. Now,
Was she home when they came out? I assume they came right out after her roommate called.
they did.
Was she home?
She had left the property to kind of avoid the conflict, and she was stopped in her car on the way out.
Did they ask her if she had pointed a gun at him?
They did. Remember the previous condition that was placed on her. You cannot talk to police except in the case of an emergency. That was the condition that was placed on her. So she did not talk to them. So she just let them say whatever and do whatever she wanted to do. So why, if she did in fact point the gun, which was never found, Mr. Weiland has admitted to several individuals, including myself, that he attempted to pick the lock of her bedroom door. And he's admitted that to at least 2 or 3 individuals. So if she did in fact do that, then that's somewhat of a self-defense mechanism. Amy's like 100 pounds, and the only thing she has to equalize herself is something like that. But as a result of that, as I was saying, she was leaving, so her car is impounded now, so she can't access her car and get money for legal fees. So she has equity in her car, she can't use that to collect any legal fees. That's about all the equity she has. But anyway, the ADA used all this, despite the fact that no gun was found. They searched the property. It is highly unlikely they would call this roommate to testify, because it's obvious from his statement that he wrote and his 911 call that he was pretty intoxicated. Even if he is in fact telling the truth, there's a lot of discrepancies in his story. If you have read my article, I'll point out some of those. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that it was sincere. Maybe it even happened. But even if it happened, picking the lock of her bedroom door is not a good thing for a roommate to do.
So did she get a lock put on her door because it wouldn't lock or
Well, it would. The reason it wouldn't lock in the first time, I don't think she actually tried to lock it originally. She just slammed it hard, was mad. I don't think she physically tried to lock it, and then that's when the officer just walked right into her bedroom and shot her. So the reason for jailing her without bond is, of course, now in jail that she can be pressured to plead guilty to one charge. And if she pleads guilty, then it's going to damage her civil suit. She has a multi-million-dollar civil suit planned, and that's one of the primary reasons about why they did that. So let's look at some of the violations of the law. I mean, you guys can probably come up with even more than I have. I didn't have time, quite frankly, to list out all the violations that I could find. But we're aware of the Fourth Amendment protections. This is the most ridiculous case of unreasonable search and seizure I've ever seen. First Amendment rights to free speech was violated, as we talked about. 14th Amendment due process, being in jail without bond on a charge with no evidence, to me would qualify for a lack of due process. Georgia constitutional violations. I haven't been able to go through the whole Georgia Constitution yet, but basically it says that you're required to protect life, liberty, person, and property. The Alfredo police officer did nothing of the sort. Legal violations. They attempted to kidnap her. They were practicing medicine without a license. There was no professional there that could evaluate her to see how she was doing anyway. Failing to comply with patients' rights guidelines. There's all kinds of stuff that it would just take forever to go through. I'm going to just skip over these. Yeah, Bill.
They also tried to assist her in suicide.
Well, yeah. Actually, quite frankly, it was an attempted murder.
Right, exactly.
That's what it really was. And they're not beyond that.
Let me just for a moment be a little bit of devil's advocate.
Sure. I'm okay with that. I told you think I lied to you anyway.
What did the officer who shot her, what did the officer say about that incident?
At the time?
Yeah, why did he shoot?
Great question. What did the officers say about why they shot her? We don't, at the time, two shot her. Two officers shot her. What did they say at the time? What a great question. We don't know, because the Alpharetta Police Department is withholding the incident reports from the two shooters. We don't know what they said at the time. All we know is that 2 days later, they told the GBI that she pointed a gun at them. If that is true, it would have been in the incident report at the beginning. And I'm convinced that the reason they're withholding those incident reports is because they concocted that story.
What,
No, that's
what
the
was the
second.
caliber of the weapon that?
Which one?
Well, weapons that shot.
The 45 hollow point bullet. She took 3 45 hollow point bullets and survived. Yeah. Massive injuries. We'll talk about. We'll talk about her injuries too. We're getting close to the end. Oath of office violations. The oath of office of a Georgia peace officer, and I want to stress the word. The police in the state of Georgia are peace officers, not war officers. This is absolute total war. They're supposed to fail. They're supposed to protect lives and liberty. They fail to do that. They're supposed to maintain order. They grossly fail to do that. They're supposed to safeguard constitutional liberties for all. Gross, massive violations in this case of all of the oaths of office. If you violate your oath of office, you need to be out of here. You're not fit to be a public servant of any kind. Alpharetta police procedure violations. Making unauthorized judgments. They're not supposed to do that in the case of the medical. They are required to de-escalate a situation and take every steps to calm it, not escalate it, as we're going to see what happened. Agitating and threatening the victim is something that they're not supposed to do. And they are supposed to provide her with reassurance and appropriate care, which, again, they did not do. So those are just a few of the cover of the violations, and it would take me forever. I have to actually literally have to work on this weekend to get prepped for a civil suit that's coming up. Okay, but it didn't stop there. So then, after this happened, now the Alpharetta police go into massive cover-up mode. The Internal Affairs Captain, Dennis Malone, conducted a secret investigation. We still do not know what the outcome of that is because they're withholding that even from the defense. Captain Robert Wessel, who took the control of the scene, and I believe was the ship supervisor on duty, we're trying to confirm that, gave his assessment of the situation. We've talked about the legal violations. Captain Wessel said there was proper escalation and de-escalation of force. All departmental policies and procedures were followed. There were no violations of state or federal law. This guy was actually demoted later, allegedly for having a subordinate to take a girlfriend around in his four-wheel drive during the snow. Now, is that really the reason why he was demoted, or was he demoted for this incident? Because it happened just a few months after this incident. Public Safety Director, Gary George up in Alpharetta. This guy knows what's going on. He knew what happened. He has got the most carefully crafted confirmation of what Wessel said. It was obviously crafted, in my opinion, to avoid liability for criminal negligence. Captain Sanford West, he's become an interesting guy in all this. He and I have had a few exchanges. He has blocked literally all of my open records requests for any substantive information about the incident. Now, there's different techniques I want to get into. I'd like to get into about how they do this. I don't know, though, about the time frame, but what they do is, the reason we don't have the incident reports is because they create a dummy incident report. In order to and we talked about this on your show, Jack, in order to cover up the crime that the police committed, they create this dummy incident report that says, oh yeah, we responded to this call, we broke in. That's all the information they find. Nothing that happened inside is available to the general public. So that subverts the intent of the open records request law. And I will pursue that, and I am pursuing that right now. They are even blocking records for the defense. The body microphones, which would have explained what happened, they have refused to deliver those to the defense. The incident reports from Officer Glass and Stone are some other things that they have withheld. Okay, so I've got about 10 minutes left, I think, maybe 15, probably 10. Let's just talk about the escalator. Yes, sir.
One quick question. Do you have a list of her medication and the doctors that she's seeing?
Well, this is a great point. Remember, Amy is in jail without bond. She just complained to me last week that they're giving her medication to which she has a known allergy. They are reversing her medication, giving them at the wrong times to try to do stuff to her to get her to agree to give up.
But is it for a mental condition?
Yeah, some of it's a sleeping. She does have, it is a fact that her mother did commit suicide, and she does on occasion play the suicide card. However, she has no real mental condition. James?
What about that, Garland?
Oh, Michael.
For her to be receiving medication, the doctor has to examine her, physically examine her, then write a prescription for that medication. So who is the doctor? And when did that exam take place?
Yeah, great question. Who's the doctor when the exam? And I don't know because did you want to say something, Jack?
Yeah, I want to tell you, first of all, when you're in jail, one of my sons was in jail for a while. Because of his size, he's about this big and he's about 350 pounds. He's a big boy. They felt he was a threat. So without a doctor's exam, they put him on Thorazine. And he walked around like a zombie until I fought these people and made them get him off the medication. So, yeah, they're supposed to do that. Do they do that? No. It's just like all this. No. They do what's expedient for them, not for you or anybody else. So I just wanted you to know that.
It sounds like Roy Barnes would love to have this case.
Well, we're going to get to the attorneys that have in just a second. Let me go to James and I'll come back to you.
Okay, just real quickly, she was, when this incident occurred, she was taking Clonopin, which is for seizures and for, so there is some. Yeah. Well, she's taking Ambien in combination.
Just taking the mental medicine for mental disorder.
Well, it's not necessarily for mental disorders, but for epilepsy or
So
something.
epilepsy, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's epilepsy, but sometimes seizures.
I'm hard of hearing, I'm sorry.
So, I mean, Amy doesn't have any mental disorder that I know of. I mean, this lady is meticulous. She has the most meticulous records about her case I've ever seen. She is brilliant. She knows the facts. She knows the law, even better some attorneys that I know.
One thing, and I'll quit asking questions.
Sure.
The only reason I ask that, if two policemen come to my house and I run upstairs and start loading the gun, something's pretty upsetting. I mean, I need some help.
Well, you have to understand.
There are 14 people and we're downstairs in my house, and I run upstairs, slam the door, get an unloaded pistol and start a little bit. There's some issues going on in my mind.
and
I
how-
need some help.
So let's walk through that. That's a great point. Let's walk through exactly what happened. I want to talk about the lieutenant in charge of the operation. We're going to walk step by step through to the point where she decided to go and run upstairs and get the gun. Okay? First of all, Lieutenant Trent Lindgren decided to break into Amy's home to perform a wellness check. He could have used other methods to do that, but that's what he decided. He broke into the home. He led the other officers breaking into the home. He personally was the one who broke the door down. He didn't terminate the wellness check after he and Officer Glass found that Amy was outside the upstairs bedroom. He refused to tell Amy why the officers broke in before she called 911. Now put yourself in this place. Then he refused to clear the residence of officers after Amy demanded 10 times on the 911 call to get out of my house. And she used a few expletives in there too. So he, again, refusing before, during, and after the 911 call to get the officers out. So you can understand that Amy's frustration is building. Exactly. So then he allowed the medic to forcefully attempt an assessment of her against her will in her own home. He allowed the medic to threaten to remove her, literally kidnap her, from her home against her will. All of these are violations of law by the lieutenant in charge of the operation. Finally, he even allowed Officers Glass and Stone to follow Amy back up to her bedroom and enter her bedroom. Now imagine how that's the frustration that's building. Amy took every conceivable step she could to exercise her rights. She told them she was okay. They reported she was okay. She asked them to leave. She called 911. And they wouldn't even tell her to leave. So imagine that this is escalating and escalating and escalating. That is causing their frustration. So what does she have left to do but pick up a gun? But let me tell you what Amy knew that we didn't know. So the question before you is, why did Lieutenant Lindgren willingly commit so many violations, clear violations of law, to create and escalate an attack that would intentionally provoke Amy Bramuchi into committing suicide or some other crime? I mean, is it not obvious that what happened? Is that not, if it's not, feel free to challenge me. It's okay, I don't mind. I like people that play devil's advocate, because we need this, because we'll be going to court. So here's what Amy knew and at that situation. Less than a year earlier, about 9 months earlier, she had caused an Alpharetta police lieutenant named Dan Drzelzinski to lose his job. He had to resign instead of being fired for his actions with her while he was on duty. She had turned him in for sexual activity after realizing he was on duty. She thought they were dating, and she did not realize that he was still married. She thought he was separated. Yeah, he forgot. He just forgot to tell her that he was still married. That's right.
This went on for quite a long period of time, too.
Correct. So she's thinking that, oh, maybe this guy's the one, and then she finds out that he's still married. So that was kind of upsetting for her. Well, Drzelzinski served in the same K-9 unit and was at that time was the superior of Officer Trent Lindgren. Lindgren was promoted to that position, we believe, after Drzelzinski was forced to resign. So Lindgren, by his own admission, knows who Amy was, what she did, and the relationship with Drzelzinski. Amy was convinced that they will probably kill her for that. So, he knew who she was, and he admits in his own report that, yes, I knew who she was.
Okay, that's very important.
Yeah. So that's the real motive behind all this. That's why it happened. That's why 14 Alpharetta police officers showed up to see a dead body. Revenge. It's a revenge motive, in my opinion. Payback. So let's just talk about the sad conclusion about all this. So Amy suffered 13 hours of surgery, a collapsed lung, a shattered sternum, fractured ribs. She lost 12 inches of intestine, and had a lung lobe removed. Amy did not harm a single individual in attempting to defend herself. Nobody, not one of those 19 people were physically harmed in any way, nor has anybody else that ever lived in Georgia been physically harmed by Amy. Stone, Glass, and Lindgren are still on the Alpharetta police force because we have a couple of captains and a public safety director that are covering up for them. And I'll be glad to tell them to their face when I get a chance soon. Again, Amy has lived in Georgia all her life. no record of physically harming anyone or being convicted of any crime. My record is worse than hers, probably. Her life has been totally destroyed. She has gotten these debilitating injuries from the shooting. She can't work. Now she's been forced to give up her home. She had a beautiful home. I've got pictures of it. She showed it to me one day after she made her presentation. I went over there and she walked me through her case. That is now all been packed up, put in storage. She's got no place to go if and when she gets out. She has a lot of very nice things. You'll see the pictures up on Justice for Amy soon if they're not already up there. She can't tell anybody about her case on social media because her First Amendment rights are violated. It's okay, I'm going to take care of that for her. She had a yoga business, a fitness business, massage therapy practice. She can't physically, she's not strong enough to do therapy or any of those things. She can't get into the positions anymore for yoga. She has little or no hope of ever recovering unless she can gain justice through the court system. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. This is the most saddest and most ridiculous case probably I've ever seen, and we need your help. We need your help. This is going to be the seminal case in the state of Georgia, along with the David Hooks murder, in determining whether we have any rights at all in the state, and whether, as Chris Ann Hall has said, does the Constitution really ever work anymore? So I'm going to ask you, I want to ask you to make a donation. And I'm going to not just ask, I'm going to plead with you. And I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I haven't already done. I have already contributed 4 figures into this to help her multiple times. And I'm not talking about decimal points. So I've already put in a couple of $1,000s of my own personal money to help her. I'm not asking you to do the same. I'm just asking you to help out. We're at a critical point of this case where we have to finish retaining the attorney. We have a great attorney. His name is Stephen Reba of Reba Law. He totally gets it, and he is going after one of the top district attorneys in this whole state on a corruption case that is beyond my wildest belief and dreams, and I will come back and tell you that at the appropriate time. It's an amazing case. Stephen is the right guy. He is working for a bargain basement rate, and he's working right now on trust because we haven't even been able to retain him with a full retainer he only wanted just an amazingly small amount of money. He's working on trust right now. Today, he succeeded in getting an order and getting her transferred from a jail to a medical facility. She will be transferred to a medical facility soon. That was absolutely critical to her well-being because of the medicine. Stephen is the right guy. We have to get this civil case together. I volunteered to help work on this all weekend with another gentleman, and we've got to get that together. The civil case is so amazing. It's going to be a landmark case. It is so big that we've been in discussions with one of the top civil attorneys in the whole state, and he is not able to put it together for us. It's just that massive and that amazing, and it requires such a criminal knowledge. He wants to help out, but we're going to have to leave that effort. So I'm asking you, please, please, please donate as much as you can. There are multiple ways. JusticeForAmy.com. We have a beautiful website that is up there, JusticeForAmy.com, done by a victim of a prosecutorial misconduct. It's a magnificent site. You can go to PayPal, JusticeForAmyATL.com. You can click on the Donate to Amy button on Voter GI. Or if you want a to write a check and get a tax deduction, you can write a check to Voter J, and I will put 100% of the money into Amy's personal account for her legal defense and her personal survival. So again, that's my play. I'm not even raising money for Voter GA anymore. I'm only raising money for Amy. So I would ask you to help out any way you can. I want to thank you for you've been so attentive. Recognize this will be a landmark case, and I'm hoping that we as the Freedom and Liberty Coalition will come together and support this because it's going to impact the freedom of all of us. Jack, thank you for having me so much. I'll stick around for any questions that you want. Yes, and by the way, I didn't mention this. There is an event coming up. We'll be doing this again if you have people. There's 3 more events coming up. On Friday, tomorrow, I will be at the John Birch Society meeting at Center Street Tavern in Ackworth at 12 o'clock. I'll do this presentation for them. I'm going to ask for money over there on the contribution we can get. Saturday night, there's a Freedom and Liberty Coalition meeting. Spartacus Legal, fundraiser for them. Catherine Bernard was the one that got us into this case. Amy contacted Catherine. Catherine's the founder of Spartacus. She wanted to take the case. She couldn't do it. She just has 2 murder cases. She has one, another one coming. She couldn't get involved, but Spartacus Legal, if you want information about that, Dave Rittenhouse, I'm sure Jack will be there, so Jack can give you that information. That's tomorrow night, a cookout at Wexford Clubhouse in West Roswell. So come there, and then next Saturday a week, I will be at Madison Forum with Michael Opitz. Please invite your friends. We'll go through this again. I'll have it a little bit more polished. I'll have another week to work on it. So please come out, tell your friends. We've got to collect the money to get that retainer completed. We can't have an attorney this good working at a bargain basement race just on trust alone when we haven't even officially gotten his retainer yet.
That's the last Saturday of the month in the morning for breakfast at the Rib Ranch right up the road.
Right, Rib Ranch. I think everybody knows where that is. It's Madison Forum. Michael is Sheriff Bill.
Garland, how did she end up in South Fulton Regional Jail when this happened in Alpharetta?
Yeah, how did she end up in South Fulton? That's the women's prison, the women's jail. South Fulton is only used for when the women, it's a very small facility, a few dozen women are there, and that's why they sent her there.
If you get locked up, you can't volunteer to train.
What's that?
Now, you can write her there. She'd love to get your letters. If anybody wants to write, I think I put the address up there. We're hoping she's not going to be there for but a few more days. We're hoping she's going to go to Georgia Regional, which is in Panthersville, which is still pretty far away. That's where she's going from southwest to southeast Atlanta. We're hoping that's going to happen very, very soon, but she'll have more freedom. So, Jack, Ben, thank you for having me. Again, thank everybody. Please, please, please make a donation, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing for the cause of freedom and liberty.
Hi, my name's Nick Messina, and as this gentleman mentioned, that I have a situation going on where I lost my son to a sniper's bullet, and I can spend an hour or two telling you the story, but a lot of the same things that you saw here happened to us. And it happened May 1st, 2012, and the guy was basically rubber stamped, no charges, and he's still walking the street, still carrying a gun, and he's still enforcing the law in Cherokee County. I'm sorry. But the bottom line is the only recourse we've had is a civil suit, and that is coming to fruition within the next month or two. What they call discovery, we'll get them to come in and to depositions and so forth and so on. and hopefully we'll have a good outcome, because that's the only option we have at this point. So, and, you know, Jack's been aware of our case, and certainly your wife's been a big supporter of us, and we appreciate that. And I know Catherine, so, but anyway, I don't know what to say except that I wish groups like this were a lot bigger, because the feeling is that we're fighting this tide of no one caring. And that's the way I feel, and I feel sometimes we all go through that until something happens in our lives and it opens our eyes, and then it's too damn late. You know, I lost my son, and that's what opened my eyes, and I just wish other people didn't have to go what I had to go through to see the other side of life and to see some of these bad things that go on. So you guys are out there trying to change things before it happens, and that's really what needs to happen. So anyway.